Hey everybody, welcome into Folklore and Flourish. You're here today with Jane. Today is May 19th, and today is all about the beauty. So we're in the month of creation and fertility, the archetype of the life giver. And today is all about the beauty, with the lesson being that beauty is a God form. We're going to see that through 4 stories today. We're going to see it through Yoruba, Greek, Roman, and Japanese folklore today. And we are going to think while we listen to these stories, what makes me radiant? So what makes me radiant? Today, we're going to adorn ourselves intentionally, honoring our appearance as expression rather than performance. So we're going to adorn ourselves intentionally and recognize that we are doing this out of expression, not out of performance. And then we are going to let beauty be an offering today rather than a measure. So with that, you're going to listen to these 4 stories on the beauty. Think about beauty as a God form and all about the month of creation and fertility. So here is your story during the week of sacred body and desire for the beauty. See ya. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1, Oshun, the radiance that awakens the world. In the sacred traditions of the Yoruba people, where rivers are not merely water but living presences, there flows a goddess whose beauty is not passive but creative, not ornamental but essential. This is Oshun, the Orisha of fresh waters, love, fertility, and radiant attraction. Her story reveals that beauty is not something separate from power, but one of its most potent forms, a force that draws life forward, that softens what is rigid, that brings movement where there is stillness. Through Oshun, beauty becomes divine, not as something to be admired from a distance, but as something that actively shapes the world. At the beginning of creation, the Orishas were sent to form the earth, to bring life and structure to what had not yet taken shape. Among them were powerful beings, each carrying strength, knowledge, and authority. Yet in their efforts, they overlooked Oshun. She was not included in their plans, not consulted, not invited into the process. Perhaps they believed her domain, beauty, love, and water, was not essential to the act of creation. Perhaps they saw her as gentle where they believed strength was needed. So they began without her. But creation did not unfold as intended. The land remained dry, the air unmoving, the efforts of the Orishas incomplete. What they built did not flourish. What they shaped did not live. Despite their power, something was missing, something they had not accounted for. Without Oshun, there was no flow, no attraction, no force to bind what had been made into something alive. The world existed, but it did not thrive. Oshun, aware of what had been done, did not rush to correct it. She withdrew, allowing the absence of her presence to reveal its significance. Without her waters, the land could not soften. Without her energy, there was nothing to draw life into connection. The other Orishas, recognizing their failure, came to understand that creation is not sustained by force alone, but by balance, by the inclusion of all necessary elements, including those that are often overlooked. When they sought Oshun and asked for her return, it was not as a secondary presence, but as an essential force. She agreed, not out of obligation, but out of alignment with her nature. When she re-entered the process, everything changed. Her waters flowed across the land, bringing nourishment, movement, and connection. The earth softened, seeds began to grow, and life emerged not just in form, but in vitality. What had been static became dynamic. What had been separate became interconnected. Oshun's beauty is not merely physical, though it is often described in radiant terms, adorned with gold, surrounded by sweetness, carrying the elegance of flowing water. Her beauty is energetic, a quality that attracts, that invites, that creates relationship. It is through this attraction that life continues, that beings come together, that creation expands. Without attraction, without the pull toward connection, there is no continuation, no growth, no evolution. In Yoruba understanding, Oshun's power lies in her ability to influence without force. She does not command through dominance, but through presence. She draws rather than pushes, invites rather than demands. This is a different kind of power, one that is often misunderstood, yet deeply effective. It is a power that exists in beauty when it is recognized as divine, not as something superficial, but as something that carries intention, that shapes outcomes, that participates in creation. Her story also speaks to the necessity of honoring all aspects of existence. When beauty is dismissed, when softness is overlooked, when the feminine aspects of creation are excluded, imbalance occurs. The world becomes functional but not alive, structured but not thriving. Oshun's return restores this balance, reminding that creation requires not only structure and strength, but flow, attraction, and the ability to connect. These are rituals dedicated to Oshun that reflect this understanding. Offerings of honey, mirrors, and flowing water, each symbolizing aspects of her essence. Honey represents sweetness, the ability to draw and attract. Mirrors reflect self-awareness, the recognition of beauty within. Water embodies movement, the continuous flow that sustains life. Through these elements, those who honor Oshun engage with beauty not as something external, but as something that exists within and around them, something to be cultivated and expressed. Thus, Oshun stands as a reflection of beauty as divine force, as something that participates in creation rather than merely existing alongside it. Her story reminds that what draws us, what we find beautiful, what we are attracted to, is not separate from life's unfolding, but part of it. In every moment where connection is formed, where something is brought into being through attraction, where life moves toward itself, there is her presence. Beauty, in this sense, is not a measure, but an offering, not something to compare, but something to express. It is a force that, when honored, brings life into fullness, and in that fullness, creation continues. Story 2, Eros, the first stirring of desire. Before the gods took their thrones, before the world had shape or story, there was a vast openness the Greeks called chaos, not disorder as it is often imagined, but a boundless, undefined expanse where nothing yet had form. From this quiet beginning, certain primordial forces began to emerge, not through force or conflict, but through presence, each one carrying a quality that would allow the world to become something more. Among these early beings was Eros, the force of desire, the impulse that draws things together, the subtle but undeniable pull that allows creation to begin. Unlike later portrayals of Eros as a useful figure with bow and arrow, the earliest understanding of him is far more expansive. He is not merely the god of romantic love, but the embodiment of attraction itself, the reason anything seeks anything else, the cause behind connection, union, and ultimately, life. Without Eros, there is separation, distance, potential that remains unrealized. With him, there is movement, a reaching across space, a joining that allows something new to form. In the beginning, Gaia, the earth, came into being. So did Uranus, the sky. They existed, but existence alone does not create life. It is Eros who enables their union, who allows the meeting of sky and earth to become fertile, to produce the Titans, the beings who would shape the next phase of existence. In this sense, Eros is not a participant in creation as much as he is its catalyst. He does not build, but he makes building possible. He does not form, but he allows form to arise through connection. This concept reveals a profound understanding of creation, that it is not driven solely by structure or by force, but by desire, by the inclination toward union. Eros represents the moment before action, the feeling that precedes movement, the quiet recognition of attraction that leads to connection. Without this initial stirring, nothing follows. The world remains potential, never becoming actual. In later traditions, Eros becomes more individualized, often depicted as the son of Aphrodite, carrying arrows that inspire love in those they strike. Yet even in this form, the essence remains the same. His arrows do not create love from nothing, but awaken what is already possible. what exists beneath the surface, waiting to be brought into awareness. The suddenness of love, the unexpected pull toward another, reflects the deeper principle that desire is not always controlled, but arises as part of a larger movement within life itself. Eros's presence in myth is often subtle, not always in the center of the story, yet always foundational. Wherever there is union, wherever there is connection, wherever something new is brought into being through the meeting of two forces, there he is. He does not demand attention, yet nothing unfolds without him. This quiet power mirrors the nature of desire itself, often felt before it is understood, guiding action before they are fully conscious. For the Greeks, this was not simply a romantic idea, but a cosmological one. Desire was not limited to human experience, but existed at every level of creation. The attraction between elements, the movement of the seasons, the growth of life, all were seen as expressions of this fundamental force. Eros was the thread that wove these processes together, the unseen influence that allowed the world to move from stillness into form. There is also within this understanding a recognition that desire is not inherently chaotic or destructive, but generative. While it can lead to imbalance if not understood, it is also the source of creativity, of growth, of transformation. To deny desire entirely would be to halt creation itself, to remove the impulse that drives life forward. Instead, it is to be recognized, understood, and integrated, seen as part of the natural order rather than something separate from it. Thus, the story of Eros is not one of dramatic events, but of underlying presence. It is the story of the first movement within stillness, the first connection within separation, the first step from potential into reality. It reminds that creation begins not with action alone, but with the desire that inspires it, that what draws us in is not accidental, but essential. In every moment where something calls to us, where we feel the pull toward connection, where we are moved to bring something into being, there is Eros. He is the quiet beginning, the unseen spark, the force that transforms existence from what it is into what it can be. And in that transformation, the world continues to unfold. Story 3, Venus, the birth of beauty from the sea. In the Roman tellings of the world's early unfolding, there is a moment where beauty does not emerge gradually, but arrives fully formed, radiant, and undeniable. This is the birth of Venus, goddess of love, beauty, and generative power, whose origin is not from quiet lineage or gentle union, but from the sea itself, from the convergence of forces that transform chaos into something luminous. Yet even within this dramatic emergence, there is a deeper truth, that beauty, though it may appear suddenly, is a result of unseen processes, of elements coming together in ways that cannot always be witnessed directly. Before Venus appeared, the sky god Uranus had been overthrown, and from this act, fragments of divine essences fell into the ocean. The waters, vast and receptive, did not reject what entered them, but held it, transformed it, and allowed something new to form. Within the sea, hidden from sight, a process began, not violent, but alchemical, where what had been broken became a source of something whole. Foam gathered upon the surface, luminous and shifting, and from this foam, Venus emerged, not as something incomplete, but as a being fully realized, embodying beauty in its most refined form. Her arrival was not quiet in its effect, though it was silent in its formation. As she rose from the sea, the world responded. Flowers bloomed beneath her steps, the air softened, and the presence of life itself seemed to orient toward her. This was not because she demanded attention, but because beauty, when it appears in its true form, naturally draws awareness, naturally creates connection. Venus did not create through force, but through attraction, through the ability to inspire movement toward her, to bring together what might otherwise remain apart. The Romans understood Venus not only as a goddess of physical beauty, but as a force that sustains life. Her influence extended into fertility, into the continuation of generations, into the subtle dynamics that bring beings together. In this sense, her birth from the sea is significant, for water itself is a symbol of life, of the unseen depths where creation begins. The ocean, in its vastness, holds a capacity to transform, to receive, to give form to what enters it. Venus emerged from this space, carries with her the essence of this process, the ability to take what is unformed and bring it into expression. There is also within her story a recognition that beauty is not separate from complexity. Her origin is tied to conflict, to the breaking of what came before. Yet from that disruption arises something that brings harmony. This does not suggest that beauty is born from destruction alone, but that it can emerge from transformation. that what is fractured can become the foundation for something new. Venus embodies this, showing that beauty is not always pristine in its origins, but can arise from the processes that reshape the world. As she moves into the realm of the gods and humans, Venus continues to act as a force of connection. She influences relationships, inspires desire, and shapes the unfolding of events not through direct command, but through the currents of attraction. The she governs. Her presence is felt in the way beings are drawn to one another, in the way life seeks continuation, in the way the world moves toward balance through union. For those who honored Venus, there was an understanding that beauty is not merely to be observed, but to be engaged with, to be recognized as part of the fabric of existence. It is not superficial, but foundational, a force that participates in creation, that sustains it, that allows it to expand. To encounter beauty is to encounter a form of divinity, a reminder of the processes that bring life into being. Thus, the story of Venus stands as a reflection of beauty as a divine emergence, something that appears in the world as both a result of unseen transformation and a catalyst for further creation. It reminds that what we perceive as sudden may have been forming beneath the surface, that what is radiant often carries within it a history of change, of movement, of becoming. In every moment where beauty draws us, where we feel the pull toward what is luminous, where connection arises through attraction, there is Venus. She is the reminder that beauty is not separate from life, but one of its expressions, that it does not stand apart from creation, but participates in it fully. And in that participation, life continues to unfold, shaped by the forces that both form it and inspire it to grow. Story 4, Uzume, the dance that restores radiance. In the ancient Shinto traditions of Japan, where the natural world and the divine are inseparable, there is a story that reveals beauty not as something static or distant, but as something alive, expressive, and capable of restoring balance to the world. It is the story of Ame no Uzume, the goddess of mirth, dance, and radiant presence, whose actions demonstrate that beauty, when embodied and expressed, becomes a force that awakens life itself. The story begins in a time of darkness, when the sun goddess Amaterasu, the source of light and life, withdrew into a cave after being deeply disturbed by the actions of her brother, Susanoo. In her absence, the world fell into shadow. Crops failed, the land grew cold, and the balance of sustained life began to collapse. The other kami gathered, searching for a way to bring her back, for without her light nothing could thrive. Yet force could not draw her out, nor could simple persuasion. What was needed was something else, something that would awaken her curiosity, her connection, her desire to return. It was Uzume who stepped forward with an approach that did not rely on command or confrontation, but on expression. She overturned a tub, stood upon it, and began to dance. Her movements were not restrained or formal, but bold, rhythmic, and alive. She danced, she moved. With abandon, she allowed herself to become fully present in the moment, embodying joy in a way that could not be ignored. As she danced, the other kami joined in, their laughter growing, their energy shifting. What had been a gathering of concern became a space of vitality, of movement, of life beginning to stir again. The sound of laughter and celebration reached Amaterasu within the cave. Curious, she wondered how the world could be filled with such joy in her absence. Drawn by this mystery, she moved toward the entrance, peering out to see what was happening. At that moment, a mirror was placed before her, and for the first time since her withdrawal, she saw her own reflection, radiant, luminous, the source of the very light that the world was missing. In that recognition, something shifted. She stepped forward, drawn not by force, but by the reawakening of her own presence, her own beauty. As she emerged, the light returned to the world. The darkness receded, warmth spread across the land, and life began to flourish once more. This restoration was not achieved through power alone, but through the act of expression, through the willingness to embody joy, to create an environment that invited return rather than demanded it. Uzume's dance became the catalyst, the moment where beauty was not observed, but lived, not contained, but shared. In this story, beauty is not passive. It is something that exists only in stillness or perfection, but something that moves, that engages, that transforms. Uzume's dance is not about appearance, but about presence, about the energy that arises when one fully inhabits themselves without hesitation. It is this energy that draws others, that shifts the environment, that creates change. Her actions reveal that beauty is not separate from life, but deeply intertwined with it, capable of influencing even the most profound imbalances. There is also a deeper understanding within this myth that life itself can withdraw, that even the source of life may retreat when faced with disruption. Yet the return of that light does not come through force, but through invitation, through the creation of a space where it can reemerge naturally. Uzume's role is not to command Amaterasu, but to remind her, through expression, through reflection, through the presence of life continuing, that she is needed, that her return will restore what has been lost. For those who honor this story, there is a recognition that beauty is not only something to be seen, but something to be enacted. It is found in movement, in laughter, in the willingness to express what is within. It is a force that, when allowed to flow, can shift even the deepest darkness, can bring light back into spaces where it has been absent. This is the essence of Uzume's gift, not just the ability to dance, but the ability to transform through expression. Thus, the story of Uzume stands as a reflection of beauty as a living force, one that does not remain contained but moves outward, affecting the world around it. It reminds that radiance is not something to be hidden, but something to be shared, that the act of expression itself can be sacred, can be creative, can restore balance. In every moment where joy is embodied, where movement brings life back into stillness, where presence invites connection, there is Uzume, dancing at the edge of the cave, calling light back into the world. Daily Thread for May 19th. Beauty is not seen, it is expressed. What you embody shapes the world around you. Radiance grows when it is shared. Joy is a force that restores balance. What you reveal invites life forward. Light returns where presence is lived. Expression awakens what has gone quiet. Your beauty is a living, moving creation.